Michael Lee Hill of Ancient Anunnaki Technology. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I don't know where I heard about you, but your information and the stuff you talk about is definitely worthy of having you be a guest on my show. So I'm glad you were able to get back to me. And interestingly, I just got an email from you yesterday, your site, saying that my 432 hertz disc is on its way. I can't wait to get that, and we'll get into the science behind how that thing and everything else that you offer works when I give you the chance to make a sales
That's
pitch
really
out of
awesome you bought one. Thank you. Dude, it's truly a miracle. I'm glad you got one because there's a lot to talk about that.
Yes, and I had a recent guest on who's really all big about the 432 hertz and everything that it does. And we'll get into that shortly. But first, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell your life story from a primary source perspective for those that have never heard about you or know that what you do. What did you experience that causes you to do the stuff that you do and sell the things that you sell and talk about the things that you talk about and all the rest of it? So I will shut up and give you the chance to tell your life story right now. I will not interrupt you, and I'll put myself on mute. You got the floor.
Right on. I'll try to wrap that up in a nutshell. My name's Michael Lee Hill. First and foremost, I'm a guitarist, and music has been my love of my life, besides my Sarah. But I'm a musician first and foremost, to the point that I won a nationwide contest called the Steve I Ibanez Guitar Challenge, obviously by Grammy Award winner Steve Vai. And the stars lined up, and I ended up winning that contest. I got to share a story right now. Actually, before that all happened, I worked for a company called Ardac Money Controls, and they make dollar bill changers for gaming and vending. And so I ended up working for that company up until they got bought out, and that's a whole nother story. But I put myself on the layoff list, even though I was one of the 20 out of the 350 that they wanted to keep. Music was calling me, like I had this calling. So I put myself on the layoff list. That worked out. They gave me a nice severance package. But after that, 5 months went by, man, and no magical doors opened. I was kind of told once I had, the faith of the mustard seed and stepped out, the universe would come back to meet me, and I would meet who I needed to meet, and it would be effortless. But if you're hitting your head against the wall, it means you're not in the flow, So I put myself on the layoff list. 5 months went by, no magical doors opened, and at this time I had the most unbelievable lucid vision, dream, and in it I met Steve Vai. This was before the contest. And I remember he was playing a song called There's a Train That's Leaving. And I'm a huge Steve Vai fan. And in this vision, I was going down a corridor with a guide, and he was in there doing a sound check, doing this There's a Train That's Leaving song. I couldn't believe it in this, vision. I was like, oh, my God, it's Steve Vai. And in this song, he is in the dance floor area looking back at the stage, calling up to the sound man, I need a little bit more treble on my guitar or whatever. And he starts playing a song, and he's like levitating off the floor. And he comes over, floats right over to where I am. And in this big crescendo of music, it's like, just welcome aboard. But when he said welcome aboard, man, it was like in a movie, God voice, you know what I mean? And it woke me up out of this dream. I said, what the hell was that about? Well, the next day, man, I had this unbelievable, weird feeling. I felt like there was a synchronicity waiting for me at Vi.com. And I thought, wouldn't it be weird if, like, for real, he was working on a song called There's a Train That's Leaving? And so I went there, and the first thing I seen is this banner, and it said, enter the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. And, dude, I knew I was going to win that contest before I even recorded a note on my guitar. I just met him in a vision. He said, welcome aboard, And sure enough, I did end up winning that contest. And that might have been stranger than meeting the Anunnaki, which we'll get into. But that's really early on, just to show you music is my main thing, but it all comes around, and we'll get into that. Music, the universe is being sung into existence. But hang on for a sec. I had to wet my whistle. I lived very close to Lake Erie, and I started seeing these huge orbs of light out over the lake. So I started. Actually, it was at a band practice at my house, and me and the bass player went into my backyard, and I lived 2 good rock throws from Lake Erie. And yeah, sorry, that was a weird noise. But are you still there?
Yeah, I'm on mute, but I'm still here.
All right, right on. You never know. So me and him went out for a smoke break. He smokes cigarettes. I don't, but we'll leave it at that. We're in the backyard, and right over Lake Erie, right on the shore, is this huge UFO. If you held your fingers up to the horizon and put them about, I don't know, 3 inches apart, that's how big this thing was in the horizon right there. And we sat there and watched it for a good 10 minutes. And it would go to the right, and then it would stop and hover there for a while, then go back to the left. And I didn't get that one on film, but it sparked my curiosity to go and get a Sony camcorder and start going down to, beaches and little coves and nooks and crannies I could find along Lake Erie. And I did. I would go down around sunset, and I'd have my camcorder there and on a tripod, and waiting for a big ball of light to go by. And I started filming these things and not really knowing what they even were, but some of it I put on YouTube, and it went viral. And to the point right now, people can check out my YouTube page. It is Michael Lee Hill, and you'll see there's over 5 million views. That's what brought the History Channel to my door in 2008. And they said they were doing a show on Skywatchers, and that they wanted to include the Lake Erie UFO story. So it went from a 5-minute story in that episode to being featured on the whole hour-long episode, Alien Contact. And that is because they flew me to Boston to have my blood work done, because the strange thing that they found was they had went about a month earlier to Washington to interview a Marine. His name was Terrell Copeland. And what the History Channel knew is he had filmed the exact same craft as I had, same orbs of light that I had. They're showing up all over right now, but we can get into that. And he had the same spiritual message given to him about like that thoughts create reality subject matter, think about what you're thinking about. But what they found out as well is he had an unknown blood anomaly that none of the best military doctors in the world could figure out. So the History Channel, the UFO Hunters team, thought, isn't it weird that these 2 guys that don't even know each other have the same footage, have the same story, have the same governmental contact, which we get into. But here's this dude, he's got this unknown blood anomaly. Wouldn't it be weird if I had it? They didn't tell me this, but they asked me if I would just be willing to update my segment, and asked me if I'd be willing to go to Boston. Well, I had no clue that they were sending me there to have my blood work done. I probably would have said no, because I am a baby, man. I do not like needles. It's almost like a phobia. But sure enough, I got to Boston, and they took us to the hospital. And I had to act like a big boy, like it didn't hurt. But that's when it was revealed by this Harvard professor. His name was David Systrom. And it was revealed me and Terrell Copeland do not have normal human blood. And in fact, it's almost the exact same levels of the anomaly, which is an increase in the enzyme creatine kinase that the brain releases. And normal levels are 25 parts per liter of blood. What they found in my blood and his blood was almost exactly the same number, around 2,100. We can get into that as well, but that was the end of the History Channel show, and that's when I found out about this blood anomaly. It was 6 months later when the Anunnaki approached me, and at that point, there was no Ancient Aliens on TV. I didn't know what an Anunnaki was, is the point. And they met me at a festival, and they proved to me that they are not normal people because the one became faceless in front of me. And they said, we want to talk to you about this blood anomaly that was revealed on the History Channel. It's truly an indicator that you are of our hybrid bloodline on this planet called the Nephilim, and that we were once known in your past as the Anunnaki. And they said you were once known in the past as Ea Inki, the water bearer. And I'll tell you, that made no sense to me whatsoever, because if you don't know who the Anunnaki is, being told you're Ea really isn't going to make much sense either. Or, for that fact, the water bearer, But we can get into that, because now I can look at someone in the eye and go, yeah, you know what, I am the water bearer. But in a nutshell, I know that was a long, big nutshell, but that's why we're talking, and that led me up to the point that the Anunnaki brought me under their wing and into a classroom where they started using crop circles as the chalkboard to communicate cosmic harmonious frequencies and frequencies that align us with divine life force. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you for that amazing, interesting insight there. And there's some things you said there that are certainly going to cause a few eyebrows to raise. And regarding your identity, get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I am familiar with
I love to talk about it. I don't say those things lightly. And when it was told to me, I didn't know what they meant. But now, through cosmic coincidence and synchronicity, they have totally educated me on what those words mean. And when I met them in 2008, they said that they were removing memory blocks. And I thought, first of all, I didn't know I had memory blocks. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell is that about? But I also thought after that, I'm like, well, how would suppressed memories, and I was finding out it's incarnationally, how would they suffer, not suffer, how would they surface without me suffering? See how that all ties together. Am I going to feel like I'm going insane? Like, what's that going to feel like? Well, we can get into that too, because at that point I was adopted. And because of the blood anomaly, the Harvard professor said, you should get a hold of your biological parents, and see if this is something hereditary or passed down. And so that's when I contacted my biological mother, birth mother, for the very first time, late 2008. And that's when I found out I'm almost pure blood Seneca Iroquois Indian. I never knew growing up. People were like, dude, you're probably Italian, and well, whatever. I just had no way of knowing. But I'll tell you what, once I found out I had Native American Indian heritage, my first thought was, man, wouldn't it be cool to, meet the elders and the chiefs and, the grandmothers of, the Native American Indian tribes. My next thought was, well, how the hell is that ever going to happen? Here I am, some white player, rock guitar player dude. How am I going to meet all these chiefs and grandmothers and elders of the Native Americans? Well, as you know, you said that you had went to Chief Golden Light Eagle's Star Knowledge Conference. We can get into that, because that's what happened. Is for me, like thinking, well, how the hell am I going to meet all these chiefs and elders? Well, I was presenting my UFO story at a conference called Angels and Aliens, and Chief Golden Light Eagle was the keynote speaker. And he's walking towards me down the hall, and all of a sudden he goes, you're from around the Great Lakes area tribes, aren't you? I said, yes. And he said, one of those Atlanteans. I said, heavy duty. He said, would you come and speak at the Star Knowledge conferences? I need a Nephilim ambassador there. So sure enough, as you know, I've been brought under, Chief Golden Light Eagle's been on Ancient Aliens. His work is in the Smithsonian. He's the real deal, man. And I feel from going with like, man, I wish I could meet these people, to actually being able to meet them and spend such time for, started in 2015. So for 5 years now, I've been traveling all over with these elders and grandmothers and learned a lot. So, yeah, I'll just end. I feel like we're on a TV. I need to go like, okay, over.
It's all right. Well, there's a lot of talking points I can bring up just by looking at the titles of the videos on your YouTube channel. That may
Ah,
actually be a better guide for this excuse me, for this interview than your actual website. Say you saw Chief Conalego, Ancient Aliens. I've seen every episode of Ancient Aliens. I don't seem to recall ever seeing him on that show. I don't know if you're confusing him with some other Native American, because there have been a lot of Native
no,
American.
you remember the episode with Cowboys and Aliens about the movie and everything? He's
Yeah,
on
I've
that.
seen that. I've seen that one, but I don't seem to
Yeah,
recall him from there.
yeah,
Okay.
he's in it.
Okay.
Clifford Mahooty, you know.
Yeah, I've seen Clifford
Yeah,
Mahooty on the show, but I don't seem to recall Golden Light Eagle. Well, I'll take your word for it.
yeah.
So many of the episodes I've only seen once, but yeah, it's a great show, I think, and saw every episode in the new season, and I can't help but wonder what exactly is it that Ancient Aliens is not doing that's causing it to not get kicked off the air, unlike Hangar One and UFO Hunters, which, according to John Ventry, Bill Burns, and Ken Storch, when I interviewed them on my show, for all intents and purposes, they acknowledged that the reason UFO Hunters and Hangar One have gotten kicked off the History Channel was because they were exposing a little too much information, and I never would have thought that that would happen to Ancient Aliens, although some of the more recent shows, they have actually revealed some things that I couldn't help but wonder if the show's chance of being on the air was going to be in jeopardy after that. It still hasn't gotten kicked off, and I'm glad. But it's a shame, though, that John Ventry has gotten a little bit of a grudge against Giorgio Tsoukalos. He may not acknowledge it, but I can tell from some of the presentations that John Ventry's done on
But,
like
I'm fans of the show because, in 2008 when I met them, there was no Ancient Aliens on TV. And they told me that they were going to start preparing the public for the reality of this higher, extraterrestrial intelligence. Sure enough, 2009, man, it hit the airwaves. But I will tell you, it's so good to talk to you because I only go into these levels with someone I know I'm communicating with. If you know what I mean? For the UFO hunters, in Bill Burns' book, UFO Hunters, the book series 1, he revealed that our episode, Alien Contact, was the whole reason the show even got renewed for a second season. And it was all about the revealing of me and man, my brain is scattered. The other dude, we'll just leave it at that right now, as being hybrids. That was a fan favorite for that show, and it's been seen more and rerun more than any other episode. But at the end of that series, we were in the works of Terrell Copeland, that's his name. They were in the process of taking me and Terrell to some of the hotspots, vortexes, in Sedona and Eastlake, Ohio. We'll get into that. But all over the planet, they wanted to take me and Terrell to these sacred sites and film what happens with us going there. And right at the end, that was right when the show got canceled. So I was really bummed. I was looking forward to that opportunity. So there's just some little trivia.
right, and where to go from here? Okay, you said the whole thing about your connection to Ea, which is another name for Enki. Now,
Yeah.
that's depending on which side you're on, that's going to cause either an uproar or some, not an uproar, but well, the reason I say uproar here is if you're a believer in the work of Robert Stanley, and I interviewed him, you would believe that Enki is the leader of the Archon control system, and he's the bad guy. But as someone who's read three
Yeah.
of Zachariah Sitchin's first 3 books, and anyone else who follows his work, you would think that that's ridiculous because Enki is supposed to be the good faction of the Anunnaki, and his brother Enlil is supposed to be the malevolent faction. So Robert Stanley's claim that Enki is not so much evil, but not the good guy on our side is kind of counterintuitive. I can't help but ask, since people have told you you have Enki connections with you. Do you have any idea what Robert Stanley would be talking about when he tries to go against Sitchin's
Well,
grain?
I know that I call them Team Bad Cop. They'll appear however you need them to appear and take whatever identity over that they want. I can tell you he's not talking about me, and that's all I can say on the subject. If you ask me my opinion, and you have, he's absolutely wrong, because judge a tree by the fruit it bears. I just brought technology to this planet that will clean this planet's water on a molecular level, and it's been proven by NASA. We'll get into that because I just did an interview with Richard Hoagland. He said, we know your story sounds batshit crazy, but NASA has been working on how energy flows multidimensionally for a very long time, and he calls it hyperdimensional physics. And he said, we know your numbers are right on the money for this class of cosmic harmonious frequency I was taken into by the Wingmakers, as I told you, the Anunnaki, also known as the Wingmakers. That ended with NASA looking into my work and proving that it's taken dead tap water that is almost no energy. They use a GDV camera, which is kind of like Curian photography, but it is more geared towards water, and it records the photonic energy level of the water droplet. And so they imaged California tap water. It was almost dead. It looked like a little pinprick of light, like a tiny star in the sky. And then they took that same water in a glass and put it on one of my 432 Anunnaki energy discs. We can get into what that is. And they just let it sit there for 15 minutes. And then they did another 6 photographs. Dude, it looks like a supernova. All this energy is returned into the water droplet, and it looks like it's exploded with energy. So I asked the scientist, I said, wait a minute. If there's no energy, but now there's energy, isn't that some form of unlimited free energy? And I said, where's that extra energy coming from? Is it from our sun? Is it from our planets? Is it from our planet's electromagnetic fields? She said, no, it's coming from another dimension. So my point is, I can prove to the world, and remember, they told me I was once known as the water bearer. This is why I told you I can look someone in the eye and say, you know what, I am the water bearer. Here's all the scientific testing and proof from NASA. I have it all, by the way, because not only did they do 6 photographs at tap water, then 6 at 15 minutes, they did another 6 at half hour, and then another 6 at 50 minutes. They also tested Canadian spring water, and they also tested Nevian bottled water. And in every case, it brought divine extra energy back into the water droplet. That can save this planet, dude, in ways that humanity can't even wrap their head around right now. Especially once, I'm sure you know who Dr. Emoto is, that water is alive and has memory. So what happens when you bring its vitality back and erase all that negative bullshit out of? So I'm starting to think the Akashic Records, the storehouse is water. It records everything it's ever been in contact with. But anyhow, so if someone is claiming that I'm this evil being, it's like, then you're taking someone else's fucking word for it. You're not looking at what I'm doing right now in this reality. And I have fought for humanity over and over again. The work I did with the NSA, the remote viewers, reverse engineering, went up against the transhumanists and the people that made the Georgia Guidestones. And we had a successful mission. That's why the energy was taken out of Hurricane Sandy and Earthquake Charlotte that brought a tsunami towards Hawaii. And that was part of the work we did, is to, with the Anunnaki, take the energy out of those programs. And that was put together by an individual named A.R. Borden. And he was the head of the secret remote viewers programs going on with the NSA. So I guess you can see it kind of gets under my feathers a little bit. Like, I really try to be a good guy, man. And you ask any of my friends, or, I would, you're either a good hang or you're not. So I would like to think I'm a good hang.
And I have no doubt you are. And yeah, I myself think there must be some mistake in regards to Stanley's assertion that Enki's the bad one, goes against everything. Although the idea that Enki and also Enlil could be other characters in other mythologies, that's opened up a whole new can of worms. There's the idea that Enki is the same as uh, Ta, which is the same as is it Thoth in
Yeah,
some
dude, I
faiths?
can tell you all of my incarnations. It's good
Oh,
you
also,
know this.
okay. Before I do that, another thing that Stanley said that I think maybe he's jumping to too many conclusions. Billy Meier, his one of his contacts is this guy that is named Ta, and Stanley says, just look at him, it's Enki. Well, dude, there's a lot of bearded extraterrestrials
So,
that look like Enki, so I don't know where he could make that.
but
But since you say you could talk about all the incarnations, could you maybe debunk Stanley's assertion that Ta is the Enki that Billy Meier speaks about, or do you not have enough information to make a
no,
statement on
I
that?
can tell you, we can fill in a lot of information. First of all, Chief Colin White Eagle, when I'd walk into the conferences, he would go, "Oh, Archangel Michael is here." I'm like, "What the hell?" I'm looking around like, "What? Who's he talking to?" You know what I mean? But he had told me before I was known as Ia, because Inky is a title; it's not a name in the first place. And Inky means Lord of the Earth, and Lil means Lord of the Sky. And it's kind of like the Dalai Lama. It's not a name; it's a title. My name was Ia, but before that, it's Michael. So you can go Michael, Ia, which we can get into. Ia means grandfather in the most ancient Native American First Nation language, which is where the Nephilim actually intertwined from Atlantis. And we can get into that as well. But so Ia, which became known as Enki. But in Egypt, I was known as Ptah. And then in the same way Marduk became known as Ra, Negajira became known as Thoth. So you're right. Like every epoch of time, it's almost like that movie Cloud Atlas. Like it's the same intelligence is reincarnating, and there's different cultural stories around each time frame. And I think it's really interesting. I am talking to Hollywood people about a brand new level of telling the story that way. But Egypt, Ptah, but then with Sitchin's tones, it's like what happened to Ea. You know, well, I can tell you, he became known as the peacemaker in Native American Indian culture. Because remember, it's going to be proven in the very near future. Matter of fact, I just interviewed with the Canadian Public Broadcast System, and what we're talking about right now will be airing out over the public airwaves there in August. So it's very timely. But the peacemaker is the one who is responsible for uniting the Iroquois tribe. And the Iroquois is the world's oldest functioning democracy. And I am of the Seneca of the Iroquois. But it also, Edgar Casey said, you know, what happened to the Atlanteans? You know, a lot of people know Edgar Casey said about the Hall of Records under the Sphinx's paw. But he also said what happened to the Atlanteans. He said they eventually went from Atlantis on the last breakup, which was 10,500 years ago, to the left and came up into the bottom of the North American continent and met the Mayans first, you know, Codiquatzal. You know, the Mayans will even say, yeah, some big white dudes showed up and showed us how to make this calendar and, you know, these pyramids. So the first culture they meet is the Mayans. But from there, this is all Edgar Casey. He said they ended up traveling up through the middle of the North American continent, becoming what is known as the mound builders. And the mound builders ended up intertwining mostly into the Iroquois tribe of Indians. Also, all the tribes, Native American Indian, have percentage. Most of it's small. The largest percentage is with the Iroquois, but it's also very present in the Cherokee and the Sioux, obviously. From what I've understood, the Iroquois have the most numbers of the Anunnaki human hybrid bloodline on this planet, but the Sioux have retained their star knowledge more so than any other tribe. So if you think about what I'm telling you that those beings, Enlil, well, he's known as Yahweh, right, in biblical times, but the whole family if they incarnated and they're here in the physical, they are going to be in the Native American Indian tribes. And I'll just leave it there because, so obviously, who's bringing the star knowledge of the actual hybrid bloodline on this planet is Chief Golden Light Eagle. And we'll just leave it there. But,
cool guy. And, all right, I'll let you say what you want to say. But on another related note, I saw a documentary yesterday talking about the connections between Enki and Poseidon, and they said that Enlil appears to have connections to Zeus, although I've never really thought of Zeus as being a bad god, and everybody projects
you know what?
Enlil
I
as
know
evil.
him very well now, and you know his only issue was he's like, man, if mankind goes free range, they will destroy themselves. It's almost like a overprotective parent. And he had been proven over and over again that most of humanity will give their energy, their I am, away to illusionary outside sources. And they won't stand up into their own I am and become sovereign, you know? And you know what? I hate to say I'm really starting to see his point. But I'm the one that went before him and said, well, you've judged humanity with our hands tied behind our back and being forced into an economic slavery system. That's not fair. You know what? I see things look pretty ugly out there, but I can guarantee you, any alien flying by planet Earth and they're tuned into the radio and Jimi Hendrix comes on, they're going to go, man, turn the ship around. What's going on down there? Mankind has so much potential for beauty and for, it depends where you look, right? If you look into political banking systems and politicians, you're not going to find it. But anyhow, he's aboard. Like Enlil and Enki have shaken hands, and as much brotherly love is flowing.
Okay, well, what about the whole story of the battle between the serpent and the eagle? And I believe it's Enki that's the eagle. That's basically depicted on the Mexican flag. What about that?
Is the eagle. And if you think about it, once
Enlil's the eagle, you said?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And, Enki was known as the Serpent Clan or the Dragon Clan,
okay.
or later the Deer Clan, Deer Stag. And it's interesting. But anyhow,
yeah, that's kind of counterintuitive though, because people think of the eagle as a symbol of liberty, and they think of Enki as wanting to fight for freedom. And when you think of serpents, you think of the evil reptilians that David Icke's popularized. You would think Enlil would be the serpent, but you're saying that's not the case.
But think of the plumed serpent or the feathered serpent. It's the serpent who has got his wings from the Eagle Nation. And I can tell you, I was given my Native American Indian First Nation name. It's Rainbow Warrior Eagle. And I was told I was given my gift of my name, which is Rainbow Warrior. And because they don't know me as Michael, that's what Chief Golden Light Eagle said. And my name was gifted to me by the Eagle Nation. So I've become the plumed serpent. And the eagle is only in Native American Indian, because screw what anyone else says, it's the designation of Native American Indian classification. And to them, the eagle is the one that flies above the storm, the only one that flies above and doesn't seek shelter below. And they get the bird's eye view of everything. It's another term for Christ consciousness, but obviously they wouldn't call it that. They call it eagle consciousness. And I can tell you too, while I'm just on the subject, Rainbow, they said, this is a grandmother telling me once I was initiated and given my name. They said, you are the rainbow we've been waiting for, that all the chakras of the human body, once they're balanced and cleansed and spinning freely, they emit light. But they only emit light when they're clean. And they emit the colors of the rainbow, from red in the root to purple in the crown. And she said, to those of us that have the gift of sight, you become the roiling rainbow. So rainbow to the Indians does not mean, it's almost like you're only when you become designated as rainbow will you be, what's the term, recognized by the Eagle Nation. And I'll tell you what they said is, once you've been deemed rainbow, and given your spiritual name, only then do your thoughts go to Creator with great enthusiasm. Because let's just say you have 6 of your 7 chakras all clean and they're glowing, but there's one chakra that's dark and it's not lit up at all. You still got a lot of spiritual homework to do to clean that chakra. Doesn't matter which one it is.
Okay,
Now
okay.
imagine
Well,
all of a sudden.
I want to stop you right there because I can't help but pick on George Kavaslis because of what he says about forget the chakras, just go with the heart soul essence. He dissolves all his chakras into one, the one being the heart. But what you just said is, well, if you do that and any of your chakras are a weak link, well, then your heart soul essence cannot be pure enough. George will agree to disagree, of course, but
No, I get it, but spirit is smarter than granting extra manifestation ability. And there's only one way to clean your chakras, man. And that's you got to swim the moat. No one can do it for us, and each one of us has a different baggage of, it's really the shadow, right? You got to transmute that shadow shit that's in the chakra system. So what they told me was, until you are designated rainbow, and to those elders that have the gift of sight, that you become the ruling rainbow, spirit never grants you any extra manifestation ability because they know if you still have a weak chakra, you're just going to manifest the shit out of what you fear, It's not going to end well. But, yeah, I really enjoy talking to you. I don't get to talk at this level very often, and know your audience, right? And I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad you think I'm a fun host. So let's try to increase the fun here and get a little bit. Let's talk about the Anunnaki a little bit further because some would say the idea that the Anunnaki could be communicating with you is, well, it makes no sense. Although then again, it would make sense if you realize the Anunnaki is not just the aliens from Nibiru that Zechariah Sitchin's glorified. The term Anunnaki, as George Cavazos told me, really refers to a hodgepodge of different ET faction groups that are the children of a universal geneticist entity known as Anu, and the ones on Nibiru are just a lower faction of that. However, it's been asserted by many, I can give a few names here, but I'm just for the sake of time, I'm not going to, that the Anunnaki from Nibiru have been locked out of our reality. And Mark Kimmel even said at a conference I was at that his contacts have told him that the planet Nibiru doesn't exist anymore. It's self-destructed. Although Patricia Corey wouldn't lead you to believe that, was because she claims to be contacting those same Nibiru Anunnaki, which she said used to be a planet of the Sirius system before it got flung out. And she would say that's ridiculous. Nibiru still exists. So do you have anything to say about this this stuff?
Well, first of all, did you say Mark Hempel?
Mark Kimmel.
Oh, okay. Mark Hempel is the Wingmakers guy. I thought that would be odd.
Mark Kimmel was the one who said Nibiru self-destructed.
We can just get right past what Anunnaki means, and what I learned from A.R. Borden, the head of that NSA program, who works with the Anunnaki already in technology transfer programs. Nibiru is our word for their planet. Anunnaki is our word for the race on that planet. That's not what they call themselves. The planet that they come from, their own word is Sa'ami, and it's almost like ancient Hebrew. It's Sa-dot-a-e, dot E. The people of the Sa'ami is the Sa'amai. And so, the race of people, Sa'ami, they come from the Sa'amai. Sa'ami, translated into our Western English, is the Sam. So truly, if you want to just get away from, well, what does that word mean? Who cares what it means? That's our word for them. They refer to themselves as the Sam, would be the right translation for us. Nibiru, as weird as it sounds, the work I did with the NSA was to, the same way, the Philadelphia experiment, right? They put a fake Merkaba field around that battleship, tore it out of this space timeline, and it popped back in 1988 or something like that. And, well, everything has a Merkaba field. It doesn't matter whether it's you or I or a cat or a dog or this planet. So think, what happens if you ignite the planet's Merkaba field? The same way that an individual that ignites their Merkaba field goes interdimensional, right? Well, as Nibiru came through, they said they were going to ignite the Earth's magnetic field, creating a remarkable field around the planet that would take it out of the space-time continuum. This was in 2012. For 1/100th of a second. But time is different when you leave this space-time continuum. That 1/100th of a second to us would take us to 2036. Just the same way in the Philadelphia experiment, that ship was ripped out in 1948, I believe, and it popped back in 1988. Then it popped back into the old timeline, and the dudes were fused into the ship, if you remember. Well, imagine, so to us, we wouldn't even know it. It's 1/100th of a second. It's like quicker than you could even blink your eye. But in that time space, we left the space-time continuum. Their own words were, I'm talking about the NSA and the Anunnaki that they were working with. So we're going to get the hell out of Dodge, but we're going to take Dodge with us. And we ended up bringing mankind into a better ending to this human timeline, because Nibiru was coming in on a doom and gloom transit into our solar system. But that wasn't the only problem. They knew what's called a galactic superwave, and it's spit out of, every universe has a giant black hole in the middle, and they found that it spits out this massive, it looks like a infinity loop, actually. It looks like, like an 8. And it starts at the middle, and then it keeps growing out through the universe. And what the scientists have seen is everywhere that passes, because it's very, very high energy wave, that say if a sun was in one phase of its evolution, as it passed, it would go into its next. Maybe it'd go from a giant to a red dwarf or whatever. Well, it was arriving in 2012. And not only that, like I said, they knew that the transhumanists were using weather-controlling technology to steer Hurricane Sandy into New York. And they were controlling what happened on the west side, and that was Earthquake Charlotte that created the tsunami. But I'm the one who took over that mission. And all I can say is hallelujah that both of them, the energies, were removed. Well, what I want to tell you is, they said, well, because of the work we did, Nibiru actually on this timeline that we had came through earlier than they expected. And I was guided to Nassim Harriman saying, you know what, we have actual SOHO, scientific evidence that a planet that was 4 times the size of Jupiter in 2003 came through our solar system. We weren't told about it because we should have been toast, havoc it should have wreaked on our electrical gravity fields of these planets and tectonic plate shifting and everything. They're like, well, why tell people? Well, as it entered our solar system, this is now in 2003, a huge solar coronal mass ejection comes off the sun and just bathes whatever that planet. I say if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Well, if it's not Nibiru, I'd like for someone to tell me what it is. And like I said, just type in Nassim Harriman, Nibiru is come and gone. That makes sense with everything that I know, that we're in a new timeline now, which mankind's going to make it. It wasn't until the very end of this Kali Yuga, man, this very end of this cycle, that we weren't going to make it. And it took almost like a Hail Mary. No pun intended. But I'll just leave it at that. I know this is not what anyone believes, and it's not what's out there, but you know what, man? I'm to a point, a lot of people are given information, and they've never met the Anunnaki. And, it's like trying to learn surfing from someone that's never been on a surfboard. Yeah, they can write a lot of good books on surfing, but you'll learn more about surfing getting on a board and falling on your ass 10 times than anyone that's... So...
Well, it's very fitting you say that, because I actually just got a surfboard in the mail. I mean, people would never think of a guy like me who's 5'11" and only about 25 pounds away from the 300 mark would be riding a surfboard. But I assert there's a lot of beer belly beach bums in Hawaii that ride surfboards, so why can't I learn to do it? I basically got it so I
Yeah,
can learn how to
right
flow
on,
with
man.
life a little better. So it's an interesting coincidence, or should I say synchronicity, that you mentioned that
Yeah, man.
on my show.
Yes,
So
that's what it's all about, man. The Anunnaki communicate through synchronicity. And I heard a great story they told me. They said, imagine that one night you have the most lucid dream ever, and in it you meet the creator and they give you a flower and says, this is going to symbolize our meeting, that everything's cool, man. You're loved and no one's ever left behind, and, just sit tight. And then you wake up the next morning and there's a real rose laying on your chest. What then? I think once you start paying attention to those cosmic winks, synchronicity and coincidence, they'll grow. And they'll grow to the point that all doubt will be removed, that something is in communication with you. That's a whole spiritual lesson then too. But what is that? Because it'll prove to you it's there, I've come to think it's our higher self. There's nothing else that would have the access to personal data, you know what I mean? Like to create synchronicity. But that's my, I'll tell you when I'm making an assumption and when not, because I don't like to make assumptions, but if I can figure out anything, I think what creates synchronicity in our lives is our own higher self.
yeah, I think there's truth to that too. And one more thing about the Anunnaki that I'd like to discuss before we switch gears. I'm sure a lot of skeptics are chomping at the bit to hear me ask you this, and that's a question that
Mhm.
so many other Anunnaki skeptics have asked to try to discredit, dare I say, Zechariah Sitchin and others, the idea that the Anunnaki could exist on Nibiru because it exists in an orbit that takes it far, far out beyond Pluto. How they assert, how could life exist on a planet that goes that far out from the sun? Well, the simple answer I assert is because physics is not what we're led to believe it is, and that actually isn't a problem, but that doesn't really answer the question entirely. So, to the best of your knowledge, can you explain what it is that they're not telling us that allows for the Anunnaki to exist on a planet that far from the sun?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, again, this is coming from people that evidently have never read a Sitchin book or never looked into the subject. Because if you do, you'll find out that they were here mining gold. Well, what were they mining gold for? They would powderize it, mix it with other minerals, and put it into their own atmosphere to block solar radiation, specifically when it came through our part of the solar system. But also, it kept the heat on the planet, this barrier of gold and other minerals. It kind of sounds like chemtrails, doesn't it? But anyhow, that would help keep the heat around the planet as they went into deep outer space. But they also told me that all energy on a planet, they're finding out, this is through NASA as well, and it doesn't all come from the sun. Planets are generating their own heat internally by whatever the process is of being physical. You know what I mean? But but with the gold and powderizing the gold to keep heat around the planet, and they also would put it into and powderize it. And when I met the Anunnaki, he said, would you like to snort a line of monoatomic gold? It's like, what the heck? And he said, yeah, we powderize it and we snort it, and it has such a high capacitance, it kind of makes all your DNA fire on all cylinders. And I did. I didn't feel anything, but I did meet Marduk later, so I'm not sure. But it wasn't like a buzz. It wasn't. I don't do coke. I will be real upfront. I smoke a lot of weed. I think it was put here by God. It has a million uses, and it's all positive. I like a little bit of beer. I've dabbled with everything else, but it's not my thing, man. Give me a couple beers and a good joint. I'm a happy camper. But the Anunnaki, that's how they live such long lives, is they turn gold into what's called monoatomic gold, and they also put it into their atmosphere to shield them from solar radiation and to keep the warmth on the planet as they go into deep outer space.
Okay. I actually, hearing that the Anunnaki actually snort, the monatomic gold. I'm thinking, okay, you have the option of doing that, but um, wouldn't it make more sense to consume it orally in a liquid form? Like I recently myself bought one of the an elixir of monatomic gold from drawing a blank on the guy's name from the site. Gerald Clark. Yeah, Gerald Clark. I bought some
Yeah,
monatomic
but
gold from
it's a
his
great
site.
way to do it. But no, man, in inhaling it, it's your nose is right there on your brain. You know what I mean? It's a much more direct um contact with your brain neurons, inhaling it through drinking it. But I hear a lot of good things about, some people have put it into water. But I can tell you that's not what the Anunnaki did, and it's not what they do. They stone it. I can tell you firsthand.
All right. Although I don't think I'm going to do any chemistry on my monatomic gold to convert into the powder form to snort. I think I'm fine just taking the recommended number of drops by mouth in a day and seeing how. I haven't taken it. I bought it some months ago, but I haven't taken it yet. I plan to take it start taking it in a couple of weeks when the weather gets a little warmer. But
Dude, I've
also,
not done it since 2008 when I did it with them. Um, like I said, I didn't feel anything. Wasn't didn't hurt. It wasn't like snorting Clorox like Trump wants us to do. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Oh, that's funny.
it's cool.
Oh yeah.
I also something I wanted to ask you about, but oh yes, the idea that the gold was used to shield the atmosphere of their planet Nibiru. I do remember Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis in an interview that he did back in 2013. He validated Sitchin's first three books, said his books were very accurate, although two things he asserts Sitchin was mistaken about. Three things, actually. One, the Anunnaki, it was not 450,000 years ago when they came to Earth. It was more like 480,000 years ago. He said that some of Sitchin's timelines were off in his books, even though the events are generally accurate. He also said that the Anunnaki did not come to Earth on a mission. They were actually lured to Earth by one of the higher dimensional 15 beings. The one in the Middle East was the one that lured them. And he also said, and I'd like to hear your take on this, the gold was not to shield the atmosphere of the planet Nibiru. It was actually for another purpose involving, well, among other things, monatomic gold, but also to use the gold as to put as an alchemical elixir in some sort of a machine or something. You'll have to listen to the interview with Lance White that Barges did to get this, but he said it was not to shield the atmosphere of the Nibiru. Do you contend or say he's got to be mistaken? It was for that purpose. Sitchin was right about that. What do you think?
You know what, man? First of all, I find Zechariah Sitchin's stuff because the NSA gave me his whole library. So here you got a lot of catching up to do in a hurry. And what they told me, this is the highest level reverse engineering teams that's actually working with extraterrestrials, and they have access to all the ancient scrolls and everything. They told me Zechariah Sitchin is more accurate than even he knew he was. But Zechariah Sitchin's work is for people of that time and his own intellect. Everything gets filtered through the person it's coming through. And the thing I can tell you is I was contacted by the Pentagon secret UFO program that funded Robert Bigelow, Skinwalker Ranch. And they contacted me in 2011. And, what is coming out through the Pentagon program as well as the UK Ministry of Defense and the Skinwalker Ranch is whatever these orbs of light can take on anything in our physical reality. They can become a giant wolf or a giant deer, or they can become three of them, these orbs of light, can come together and create a giant triangular craft that then thousands of them can then use. They can stop time. I'm talking about the intelligence, the Skinwalker Ranch intelligence, which, when I was contacted by Bigelow Aerospace, it was Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Studies, BASS. And they said, we know that you're in contact with the real thing because we've been studying it over the Skinwalker Ranch for a very long time. And he said it has a lot less to do with what people think of as UFOs having nuts and bolts and made of metal and, they're all screwed together. That these have more to do with portals and time travel. This was the Bigelow. His name was Gary Hernandez, by the way. He said, we know you're in contact with this intelligence because we've been studying it for over 25 years over the Skinwalker Ranch. So what I'm telling you is this idea of the Anunnaki being multidimensional and being able to create event strings both forwards and backwards in time that are very intricate to have things play out. That's not in, I've never read it in any of Sitchin's works. Matter of fact, I've not heard it from anyone else whatsoever. This is straight from source. And now the Pentagon, Bigelow Aerospace, and the UK Ministry of Defense. Because when I was contacted by Bigelow, he pointed me towards the UK Ministry of Defense had just declassified a bunch of documentation. They said the real thing is these orbs of light. And in their own research, they've seen these orbs of light come together, and in some process that's not known to us, they could become something like a giant triangular craft, like what flew over Phoenix, you know? So the idea that a lot of people get from Sitchin's works, like the Anunnaki are a bunch of like bad teenagers going around screwing their creations and, you know, have all these evil, but it's like if they meant us harm, man, you and I would not be talking. So that multidimensional aspect of the intelligence that we are encountering right now, it's not in the Sitchin books. It's not. It's. I guess it's the next phase for people to try to start to understand.
All right, and I seem to recall just not that long ago in this interview, you actually mentioned the date 2036. Interesting that you mentioned that date. I'd like to get back on that for just a moment because a couple of sources, like Brad Johnson, who channels Adronis, and he backs up his claim with a guy who does research on the Pyramid Code phenomenon, saying that the year 2037 will be a year of great consciousness shift, the likes of which Earth has never seen before, where we may actually have like 3 to 10 days of darkness. And it's interesting how that's around the same time period as the asteroid Apophis, which is named after the Egyptian god of destruction.
Oh my
is
God,
supposed
so
to.
glad you know these things. Yes.
Yes.
It's all about a prophet, man.
Well, yeah, but what is that all about? The 2037 consciousness shift, and also the fact that the Apophis asteroid is supposed to come a little bit before then, if it passes the keyhole point in 2029, that is, on Friday the 13th, 2029.
Yeah, 2029 is the first transit, and then it gets stuck. You know, here's what happened is I partnered with, you know, Ancient Aliens, David Sarita, and we made a movie called From Here to Andromeda. And in it, he was working with John Hutchinson, you know, the guy that was working on anti-gravity, you know, and he had that crazy mad scientist laboratory in Canada. He was making bowling balls and milkshakes float and shit. Well, Lockheed Martin had been trying to get him to work for them for a very long time. And at the end of our production shoot, he got us an interview with this gentleman named Boyd Bushman, who was a senior scientist for Lockheed Martin. And he brought David into his Lockheed Martin office. And at the end of it, he just popped the bubble, you know. He just told us everything. Showed us actually the first craft that were reverse engineered and flew in the late 50s, and it's all in the film. But at the end of the interview, he points up and it's Apophis above him. He said, you know, Lockheed Martin knows this thing's coming, you know, and it's in 2029, it's going to pass between the Earth and the Moon, which, you know, yeah. Anyhow, then it's locked into Earth's gravity. It's going to come back through, I think it's 2 or 3 times, but anyhow, the last transit is 2036, and that's when the impact happens. And David asked him, well, what kind of event are we talking about? You know, is it civilization ending? He said, well, we don't really know that. We don't know the trajectory. We don't know the composition of Apophis. What I can tell you, I have some friends now that work within Lockheed Martin, and they've already sent a spacecraft specifically to Apophis to analyze its composition and know exactly its angle, trajectory, and whatnot.
Well,
It's real.
that raises a question, though. I need to ask you. They say that the worst thing you could do to an asteroid that's about to hit the Earth is blow it up because all the small parts are
Yeah,
going
you
to hit
don't
the
want
Earth.
to do that.
However, it has also been asserted if you knew the asteroid was going to hit the Earth many years beforehand, you could blow it up, and then over the course of time, the parts will dissipate to the point where they will eventually dissipate so much that they are no longer a threat to the Earth. Well, if that's the case, that raises the question: why can't they use a John Hutchinson death ray to destroy Apophis right now so that it won't be a problem in the future? Any reason they can't do that?
Absolutely. First of all, I was sitting next to Chief Goal and Light Eagle at Angels and Aliens conference, and out of nowhere, he told the audience, Spirit has given us approval to talk about there's a celestial object that's coming into our solar system in 2036. And he said that it's going to hit the Earth. I believe, again, it's going to be like Siberia, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be horrible. He said, Spirit has told us that I know what this sounds like, dude. I'm just repeating information. The moon has said that she'll take the hit for us, that she'll put herself in the way of Apophis, and the moon would crack into 3 pieces. It's still horrific for mankind. There'd be chunks of the moon actually laying down on this planet, but it would be survivable. Well, once the veil dropped, and he knows I'm Ia, and we're talking about what to do about the 2036 thing, I said, me and a 7-member team stopped the hurricane and, stopped the tsunami from hitting Hawaii. That's only 7 of us. Can you imagine if 70 of us combined our mental energy and, or 7,000 or 70,000, he said, you know what, you're absolutely right. He said, prayer can change any outcome. Thoughts create reality. He said, but people need to know if they don't change their viewing materialistically their experience and so taken into greed, and once they know this is happening, the plan on a Native American Indian plan is to start a moon dance, a brand new moon dance where people go and celebrate our existence and show love to the moon and play music and have worldwide, like our jobs once the Templar treasure is released on this planet and we're all freed and that's not an issue anymore, our jobs are going to be the sun dance while it's turning into the moon dance. He said, if mankind shows that it's changed its ways and wants a more peaceful, beautiful outcome, it is possible. But if they don't, they need to know, this is him speaking, that, options 1 or 2, either it hits the planet or the moon puts itself in the way, are very much on the table because we've created it by our misuse and mishandling of this planet. What I've been told is it's a second moon, the third option, is we're having another moon flown in just like the first one was. I think most people are hip to now, the moon is hollow and it's really not, shouldn't even be there. And then you find out too, man, we can get into the whole 432 subject, but the moon miles across is 2,160 miles across. Well, 216 is exactly 1/2 of an octave, 1 octave below 432. As Pythagoras, he said, just because you got your middle note on a piano tuned properly to 432 hertz, 232 hertz, there's still a lower A note on your piano. It's called an octave. And then another. So he said, it's really easy math, man. All you got to do is divide 432 by 2, and you get 216. Well, look at the sun. It's the first 3 is 864 with like 3 zeros miles across. That's 432 times 2. That explains during a total eclipse why the moon perfectly fits, size-wise. One's an octave below 432, and the sun is 2 octaves above 432. Hence, on a total eclipse that happened in 2017 and again in 2024. So if you know that the second Pleiadian second moon is being flown in, that when it gets here, remember you're talking about 2027, 2037, that the Earth becomes a paradise, that the waters are totally regulated, and that weather systems are totally regulated. And but what he's telling me, there's 3 different probable timelines that every human is going to have to choose. If you go into fear, or you're not ready for option 3, you'll attract option 1 or 2 into your own existence, into your own reality by your own fear-based thought forms.
Yes, and I'm chomping at the bit to see that 2024 April 8th eclipse. I did try to go down to South Carolina to see the 2017 one, but clouds ruined everything. I got a nice consolation prize though. Got to see my baby nephew after that because my brother and his children live there. And well, then again, I'm not so pissed off that clouds block the eclipse because it didn't take me long to realize why. Because this eclipse, that's not the important one. The important big enchilada eclipse is the one in 2024, and I'm already making plans to go to Carbondale, Illinois to see that one, which is of course the crisscross location of that eclipse and the one that happened in 2017. I can only imagine that the gods are going to make sure that the skies stay open in the crisscross point of those eclipses in Carbondale for me to see that one in 2024, which is supposed to, among other things, signal the end of the Roman Empire of the modern era that is the United States of America. But there's going to be a lot of things we still have to fix on planet Earth after the Roman Empire falls, because, well, if Humpty Dumpty falls and breaks, you got to put him back together again, and we still got to do a lot of that on planet Earth, and it may take a while. But
the interesting part of this that no one knows yet, I told you that I was once, one of my incarnations was known as the Peacemaker for the Iroquois.
Yeah, you said that.
The Peacemaker at the formation of America, land of the plumed serpents, was a Seneca chief. His name was Chief Cornplanter. That was one of my more recent incarnations. And Chief Cornplanter is who George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin went to learn this experiment of we the people. And this experiment in democracy wasn't how things were done in England. They learned it from Chief Cornplanter. And it eventually became our Constitution as well. I can tell you there are people that within the Templars that know this is the truth, that this was there was an experiment the Anunnaki put into play 27,000 years ago that made all of mankind experience its own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, unbiasedly. Whatever you put out, you're going to experience tenfold back. If it's fear, God help you, It's your own doing, but if it's love, then it can be a different experience. But this 27,000-year experiment by the Anunnaki to help us be more prepared for this time, it ended with America. It ended with, well, let's see what humanity does with their newfound freedom. And all parties, Team Good Cop and Team Bad Cop, go to the sidelines. And mankind gets to make their own way and show what they're made of. Well, I hate to say, man, I guess diamonds in the rough. We didn't do very good. But what you can look into is called the Cornplanter Tract. The Cornplanter Tract is the first treaty signed ever between the United States, America, and the Native American Indian tribes. And in it says the Seneca and the Chief Cornplanter forevermore own the land in Pennsylvania, which now they got kicked out of another Trail of Tears in the 1960s. 600 Seneca were made at gunpoint to leave that area because they created Kinzua Dam to bring hydroelectric power to Pittsburgh. But in this treaty, it says those 1,500 acres and the land in Salamanca, New York, which is where Niagara Falls is, forevermore will be owned by the Seneca, and they're truly not parts of the United States. People don't know this, but it is a country within a country. When you go to Niagara Falls, you pass by a sign that says you now left the United States of America. You are now under Seneca law and provision, and there is a fee for your toll through these lands that is being paid for you by the United States government. Well, the Pennsylvania affection that in this treaty was given 1,500 acres, it clearly states it's Chief Corn Planters and his heirs. Well, I can tell you, because of the blood anomaly and all of that and being tracked, I am an heir of Chief Corn Planter. That land's mine, and I already have a lot of powerful Seneca lawyers behind me. I will be getting my land back. It's not even a point of, I want my land back. It's a point of, how dare you do this to the people that started America and are responsible for it and are truly the lost tribe of Israel. We can get into that. This bloodline is called haplogroup X2A. Just Google it. Now it's intertwined into the Native American Indians. They know about 3%. It might be much higher because not a lot of Indians have had their blood work done. But when you go backwards in time, it's in the mound builders sites. You know, they've removed these giant stature skeletons. And then if you go further back in time, where you find the highest concentration of that DNA, haplogroup X2A, that's going to tell you where it came from, right? It's the hills of Galilee. This is the Holy Grail Sangreal bloodline, and of course, Enlil and Enki is incarnated into it. Who else would they be incarnated? First of all, this is very interesting to me because now it lies within the Native American Indians. So this idea that the Nephilim and the Anunnaki, who have been thrown under the proverbial bus as the people behind the skull and bones and all these secret societies, it's bullshit. DNA proof is going to show they're coming in for the Native American Indians. What does that have to do with secret societies? I can tell you, nothing. As a matter of fact, this race of people, us, have been suffering at the hands of this European system more so than anyone. You know, the worst genocide on this planet was perpetrated against us. Some say as high as 100 million. So, yeah, I want my land back. But now think of what's happening. And even right now, we already own our land in Salamanca, New York. So there is unlimited free energy people already waiting to bring unlimited free energy devices to power our lands. We will become a beacon of light to this whole planet of what's available. Now, I'm sure we're going to be talking to Elon Musk here soon. And it'll start from the Native American Indian culture. The Anunnaki have told me we will not enter the Golden Age through anyone or anything other than the Native American Indians after they've been given a fair handshake and the crimes against humanity that have been perpetrated against us are made light, and then we'll move into the next Golden Age.
Yes, and the faster we get there, the better. Yeah, the whole Trail of Tears thing you mentioned, that was not just on the Native Americans, what that Andrew Jackson did. I mean, having Teddy Roosevelt's mug on Mount Rushmore is a total travesty. He may have seemed like a good politician, but he had absolutely no authority to convert our land into national parks the way he did when he became president after the assassination of William McKinley, which almost certainly was a conspiracy since McKinley was trying to sabotage some of the bankers and Illuminati's plans for American imperialism. He wasn't going to go along with it, so they probably put some patsy under mind control named Leon Czolgosz to kill him, and that led into the Roosevelt era, and then his ugly mug up on a Mount Rushmore, which is a travesty. I'm sorry, but but anyhow, they have a boulevard named after him in Philly, Roosevelt Boulevard. That's a travesty too.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So with that being said, we got about 45 minutes left in the show, so let's get some of the music and physics stuff. Well, you're into music. I just bought myself a recorder, one of the most basic music instruments. They teach you that in 3rd grade. I just got my own, and I don't even think I'm going to watch any videos saying learn how to play the recorder. I'm just going to teach myself how to play it and see what the notes sound like, and just do it on my own. Just Help me, yeah. So you resonate with that because you're a guitar player, so it makes sense. And
Yeah.
anything to flow with life better. And also, 432 hertz. That's a total joke of a well, it's a joke of frequency that we've gone to 440 hertz. The tuning we should go to 432. Out of curiosity, as someone who's really big on the 432 hertz thing, do you see any timeline in the future when the music industry of America is going to realize, okay, it was stupid of us to tune to 440 hertz. We got to go back to 432. Is that ever going to happen in the near future so we
Yes,
can be in
it's
harmony better?
happening right now, and I really am proud to be um, waybringer of that grassroots movement. My video 369 432, 432 and 369, keys to the universe. That video, people can check it out on YouTube. A guy named Gary Wright, I believe is his name, contacted me and said, I'd love your research. Would you mind if I do a video of it? I said, no, knock yourself out. Well, he made two versions, one that has music behind it and one that doesn't. Gary Light, I believe, is it. And the both of them combined is nearing about 3 million views right now. So I can tell you what happens from a musician's viewpoint is once you hear this, it's pretty intuitive when, like, they say a picture is worth a million words. Once you see, 440 pumped through a cymatic device, which is new science that makes the invisible visible for the first time, we can see what kind of geometry different frequencies are forming. And 440 looks like a puddle of mud. You back it off to 432, which is only 8 cents. To the human ear, it's barely even discernible. But to the universe, it's everything. All of a sudden, it's like you've taken a focus on a camera and put it into focus, and all of a sudden, this beautiful geometry forms. The easiest way, by the way, the whole 432 subject is exactly what the NSA remote viewers and being brought into the Anunnaki classroom was all about. And the easiest way to tell you why it's important is everyone knows about E equals MC squared, right? E equals energy, M is mass, C is the speed of light squared. But also all quantum physicists now tell us everything is both particle and wave. So E equals MC squared, M equals mass, that's particle. That's the particle part of the equation. Where's the wave? Where's the frequency component of the equation? What you find is 432 squared becomes C. So 432 base frequency squared becomes the speed of light within 1% accuracy. Then that squared times mass, which in this case would be photons, equals energy. 432 base frequencies are truly the only frequencies that are harmonics of light, that actually tie one into what is galactic cosmic energy that Tesla was talking about. To get into how all this came, because I started to understand about this 432 subject, but simultaneously, as I said, the Anunnaki said, you were once known as the Inky, the water bearer. Well, that made no sense to me whatsoever. So I asked them at the end of 2008, I said, listen, if you are who you say you are, and I am who you say I am, encode the name Inky into a crop circle. I can tell you I pay attention to the subject. I will take notice. That'll be my confirmation that you are who you say you are, and I am who you say I am. And left it at that, but instantly this thought hit me. I'm like, what a silly request, In my mind, I've seen a big crop circle with Inky written in cursive, like a big birthday cake.